Hi friends, welcome to another episode of LoadRunner Series. In this video, we are going to see how to become an expert in correlation. So this is a complete theoretical explanation, and I try to be tool agnostic, but mostly I focus on LoadRunner and JMeter tools because I primarily work on those tools at my work. So let's jump, and I try to be more elaborative so that you will get an idea how to become an expert in correlation. First thing first, you should know what to correlate. So there are a lot of dynamic strings will be generated in the response data, so there is not required. It's not required to generate correlate everything. For example, x comma y coordinate, and a lot of junk values will be generated in the response data, which we do not need at all. So mainly you should look for the session ID for logging in, log out, and continuing with the whole business flow, and time in milliseconds. I mean, there is no need to correlate time in milliseconds. You can write a function, but if you feel like to correlate the time, dates, etc., you can correlate. And look for the order ID, reference ID, cart ID, product ID. So anything related to IDs, try to correlate. And if the ID is static, definitely you can parameterize, but I always prefer correlation for those IDs, because anytime the developers can change the ID, or anytime the database can make a refresh. So try to correlate the reference numbers, order IDs, product IDs, etc., catalog ID, whatever the IDs you see, try to correlate those values. And try to correlate the dynamic strings like product names, or anything you see the customer data, right? So try to correlate those stuffs. Whatever people enters, the user enters, like first name, last name, date of birth, social security, Aadhaar card number, address, state, country, telephone number. So those things you can parameterize. But whatever the stuffs it is generated by the server, try to correlate, and whatever the stuffs the user enters, try to parameterize. This is a very simple technique which will help you to decide whether you need correlation or parameterization. And first thing first is, if you want to become an expert, you need to experience in multiple technologies, Java, .NET, PHP, client-side applications, single-page applications. So if you are experienced in multiple technologies, it's quite easy to identify the values which is generated by the server. So you should know, it's just an intuition. So these values from server and these values from the client side. So if you are experienced in multiple technologies, then it's quite easy to identify the dynamic strings while doing correlation. And if you do not have experience, do not worry, there are a lot of options to correlate the dynamic strings. The first thing is manual scanning. So after you recorded your script in JMeter or LoadRunner, try to navigate each request and try to see what data you are sending in the body and also in cookies. So this will help you to understand what your script is doing and what kind of values you are sending to the server. And once you manually scan your script, execute it at least once and go through the response data and see what it is being captured by the server. So after recording, just execute it once and see what kind of request you are sending and what kind of response data it's being generated by the server. And the next step is you have to do multiple times the recording and replay. So record it twice and compare the recording snapshots, and execute it twice and compare the replay snapshots. So you have to do a lot of comparison. There are a lot of tools available, WinMerge, the LoadRunner default. And if you have Notepad++, you can install the comparison plugin, or if you have money, you can spend on Beyond Compare tool. So it's up to you, but comparison will help you to identify the dynamic strings. Again, in comparison, it will show you a lot of junk values, but don't worry about that. Just identify the meaningful dynamic string which is generated by the server. And if you have a code generation log, you can go through the code generation log. You can visit my previous video. I explained how to correlate using code generation log. And runtime logs. So as I said, you have to record and replay it multiple times and see the runtime logs to identify the dynamic values. And if there is no dynamic value captured in your recorded session, regenerate it with web_URL mode, and this will reveal more details from the server. So go for a detailed log and go for detailed code generation, so that you can identify what kind of values is being generated by the server. And also you have to make use of rules. So rules, if we go to rules in LoadRunner, they have a template for each technology, and if you enable specific rules, it will automatically correlate, but only use the rules if you are sure about the left boundary and the right boundary. So if you're not sure about the left boundary and right boundary, then you need to validate it manually. Then you create your own rules and then save some time. And make use of groups in JMeter. So if you want to identify two dynamic strings in one a line of code, then use the groups. So make use of groups. And if you're not able to get anything, then go to your favorite browser and make use of the developer tools and see which line of code has issues, and go to that particular flow manually in your browser. Then capture the response, the request and response, even the headers, request headers, response headers, everything, and compare it with your script. So developer tools is an awesome opportunity for testers like us, which will help you to reveal the dynamic strings, and which will help you to debug your scripts. So you have to be an expert in how to use the developer tools in your favorite browser. And last option is, if you are not able to get anything out of it, the last option is to ask the developers or the architects to know what dynamic string is being generated by the server. And even though you have issues, you can raise a support ticket, but I'm not sure how support ticket will be much helpful, because they need to know your application, and they should go through your script, a lot of stuffs. But I would keep very least of it. But within your organization, if you're not able to get the dynamic strings, ask the developers. So I hope these tips will help you to identify the values, and if you follow these steps, definitely you can become an expert in correlation. It will take its own time based on your previous experience and the learning pace, but do not give up while doing correlation, while learning correlation, because it will take a lot of time to understand the concept. So if you have any other tips and tricks, please make sure you add it in the comment, so that it will be helpful to other users. So thanks for watching. If you have a time, please go to my next video. Otherwise, have a good day.